Hey folks, how you all doing? So today I'm going to do a video of my 10 favourite Elvis Presley albums of all time. These include his studio albums and soundtrack albums, of which there were 24 studio albums recorded during his lifetime and 18 movie soundtrack albums as well. So I'll give a couple that didn't quite make the cut first. So honourable mention goes to the movie soundtrack Blue Hawaii. Fantastic soundtrack from 1962. It was all downhill after this for his movie soundtracks. They just didn't. They were pathetic basically, apart from the odd song here or there. This was the last really good movie soundtrack he made. This one didn't quite make the cut neither. This one ended up at number 11 on my list. GI Blues movie soundtrack. We also had this album from 1975, Today. This one included Trouble and I Love You So, and Green Green Grass of Home, and another cover of I Can Help. Another one that failed to make the list was 1973's Raised on Rock / For Old Time's Sake, and from around the mid-70s, Now also failed to make the cut slightly. I managed to round it down to 15 albums, but of course only 10 could get in, so they're the 5 that just missed out. These are the 10 that made the cut. As you can see, I'm wearing my Elvis Presley Graceland hat instead of a cap instead of a hat, which I picked up at Graceland on the 15th of August 2011 with my good friend Ed Husbands, who lives in Kentucky. So hey Ed, if you're watching, yeah, we still remember our time together in Kentucky and through the southern states of the US, and especially Graceland, which was a bucket list thing ticked off for me. Anyway, at number 10 on my Elvis Presley studio albums, I have Promised Land. This was released in 1974. It was his 21st studio album. And when you consider that he started making studio albums in 1956, his debut studio album, and this is now 1974, so 18 years, or 17 years, 18 years after his debut album, he had put out 21 studio albums and 18 soundtracks by that stage. That's an incredible output of material. And then you've got the 31 movies as well. So, you know, incredible output by Elvis Presley. A lot of it is pretty bad, admittedly, the movie soundtracks and his movies also, but his albums are generally pretty good overall. So this one, can you see me? Not quite. This one peaked at number 47 in the US, didn't chart in Australia, and number 21 in the UK. It's a solid collection of country crossover material, including low-key ballads like Mr. Songman, sorry. It's Midnight, which is a sad power ballad. And then you've got a couple of rock and roll songs on here as well, If You Talk in Your Sleep, and a cover of Chuck Berry's Promised Land. Excellent album. Just show you the tracks there if you're interested in looking at them all, seeing what you know. Excellent album. I love all these albums, by the way, so I'm going to say excellent album every time, guaranteed. At number 9 on my list, I have Lovin' You from 1957. This was his first movie soundtrack, so it's not regarded as a studio album. It reached number 1 in the US, number 1 in the UK, number 1 in Australia. So the first side of this was a soundtrack to a movie. He was really trying to act in this movie. There was a storyline to it, and the soundtrack is excellent. And you know, you got songs like Mean Woman Blues, Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear, Lovin' You, Got a Lot of Living to Do, and Party, all of which everybody would know from radio airplay. Then on the flip side, because there wasn't enough from this for the entire soundtrack, we ended up getting studio songs specially recorded for this. Have I Told You Lately That I Love You, cover version, and an excellent cover version of Blueberry Hill also, which Fats Domino once said this was his retirement ticket, Elvis Presley recording that song. So yeah, excellent soundtrack slash studio album at number 9. Number 8 on my list, I have Moody Blue. This was his 24th and final studio album. It was released in 1977, a month or so before he died. Peaked at number 3 in the US, 3 in Australia, 3 in the UK also. Contains a mix of studio tracks recorded over the previous year to 18 months of his life, and also 3 live tracks on here. If you listen to this album, especially his version of, say, Unchained Melody, for example, he still had his voice right to the end. His tenor was absolutely brilliant. He could hold every note imaginable right up to the end. Such a sad shame and a waste of a life that prescription medication took over his life and finally ended it for him. But yeah, there were 2 major hits off this one. Way Down was the first single off here, which is here, and also the title track, Moody Blue. Yeah, as you can see, all the songs of the titles of the songs are on there. So yeah, that one comes in at number 8 for me. Number 7 on my list, we have his Elvis Presley's 9th studio album, How Great Thou Art. This was released in 1967, reached number 18 in the US, number 11 in the UK. This was his second of 3 gospel slash spiritual albums that he released in his lifetime. I only have the first 2, but I have every spiritual song he released on a 3 CD set called Peace in the Valley, the complete gospel recordings. But yeah, this is his second gospel album. Contains a collection of traditional gospel songs, modern gospel songs, and hymns as well, traditional hymns. He also won a Grammy Award for Best Sacred Performance for this album. And it's interesting to note that Elvis Presley received 3 Grammy Awards during his lifetime from memory. All 3 were for his gospel records, not for his rock records. So, you know, that's a bit of food for thought, isn't it? Elvis Presley received Grammy Awards for gospel, not rock and roll. But yeah, great album. There's only one real single off this album of any note, and that was Crying in the Chapel, which was actually recorded and released 3 or 4 years before this album, but was tacked on to the end of this album just to fill up space. But yeah, number 7, How Great Thou Art, Elvis Presley. Number 6 on my list, this was released in 1976, is the Sun Sessions. Technically, it is not a studio album, but a collection of his pre-RCA songs from Sun Records, i.e. the Sun Sessions. Because there wasn't a studio album released when he was with Sun Records. He just released a load of singles, and there were a couple of unreleased tracks as well at the time. So this was a collection of that. So I have included this simply because it's not a greatest hits compilation. It's a collection of material recorded pre-rock and roll days. Reached number 76 in the US, number 16 in the UK, and as I said, was released in 1976. This is absolutely fabulous. This showed the raw energy of Elvis Presley and the talent that was about to explode onto the world market. A lot of us know a lot of these songs. That's All Right Mama, Blue Moon of Kentucky, Good Rockin' Tonight, Mystery Train, most of us would know that, and probably Milk Cow Blues Boogie and Good Rockin' Tonight. Most people would know them songs from compilations, but this is a collection of his pre-RCA and world dominating Sun Records. Absolutely brilliant. At number 5 on my list, we have another movie soundtrack. This was for his second, this is his second movie soundtrack, but his fourth movie. Yeah, Love Me Tender, Loving You, Jailhouse Rock, and King Creole. So yeah, this was the last movie he made prior to going in the army. It's a black and white movie, absolutely fabulous. His acting is really good, the storyline is good, and the songs are second to none. King Creole, this was released in '58, as I said. Got to number 2 in the US, number 1 in Australia and the UK. This is full of lots and lots of classic rock and roll. We all know Hard Headed Woman, we all know King Creole. You'd probably know a couple of the other songs if you heard them, but they were the two big hits, King Creole and Hard Headed Woman. Half the album is as rocking as those songs. There's a couple of tender ballads on there, and there's also a couple of Dixieland jazz type songs as well. Excellent album and an excellent movie. If you've never watched it, go give yourself a surprise this Christmas and watch it. At number 4 on my list, we have studio album from 1970. This was technically his 11th studio album. That's the way it is. Reached number 21 in the US, number 13 in Australia, number 12 in the UK. It's sort of a soundtrack album and sort of a studio album as well. They made a documentary out of the making of this, as he was about to perform in Las Vegas. So they had rehearsals in that and a performance from the live shows as well. But a lot of these songs, the finished versions, are on this album, plus some songs that weren't in the documentary are there. There's a cover of Bridge Over Troubled Water. He does a pretty good version of that. Obviously he's no Art Garfunkel, but yeah, he does a pretty good version, a bit country tinged. You've Lost That Love and Feelings on here as well. He sings that as good as the Righteous Brothers, in my opinion. But yeah, just a lot of great classic songs that Elvis Presley made his own. And that is the thing with Elvis. When he sung songs, he put his own energy and feel into them to make them his own. Like Sinatra did. I'm not a fan of Sinatra, but he made songs his own when he sung them and recorded them. And Elvis Presley did the same. He made songs his own. He put feel into them, emotion into them, and just his delivery of them was different from a lot of other artists. Excellent album. Elvis Presley at his peak, in my opinion, song-wise. Brilliant stuff. At number 3 on my list, I used to have the vinyl of this, like a reissue vinyl on the Camden RCA label, which was released around the time he died. I can't locate that at the moment, but I did manage to get the CD a few years ago. Elvis Christmas album. This was his 3rd studio album. It was released in 1957. Number 1 in the US, number 3 here in Australia, number 2 in the UK. We all know songs like Santa Bring My Baby Back to Me, Santa Claus is Back in Town, Here Comes Santa Claus Down Santa Claus Lane. Radio airplay standards at Christmas, but there's also some standard songs on here, like White Christmas, Silent Night, O Little Town of Bethlehem. Absolutely brilliant. This is the greatest Christmas album of all time, in my opinion, and it is the first album I play and the first lot of songs I play when I get out on my Christmas material over Christmas week, basically. Greatest Christmas album of all time. If you've never heard it, do yourself a favour, go and get it. Absolutely brilliant. At number 2 on my list, to be honest with you, number 4, 3, 2 and 1 could have appeared in any order. It's just that when I played them over the last 3 or 4 days, I played them all, and this is the order that I thought they deserved to be in on this particular day. Any other day they could be in any other order. So at number 2 on my list, I have Elvis Is Back. This was his 4th studio album. It was his first studio album after returning home from his conscription into the US Army. Reached number 2 in the US, number 1 in Australia and the UK. This one here, it's got the tracks on here. You know most of these songs actually. You know Fever, you know The Girl and My Best Friend, Such a Night, The Girl Next Door, When I'm Walking. We all know those songs. Classic rock and roll. There's also some couple of jazzy type, blues type songs. You got Fever on here. It Feels So Right, which is very dirty rock and bluesy. Like a Baby and Reconsider Baby, both jazzy bluesy songs. And then you got almost a doo-wop song with Thrills of Your... It's not doo-wop, but it's got that same vibe. Thrills of Your Love, a Dirty, Dirty Feeling, as I mentioned. It's just a fantastic collection. Probably the best collection of studio songs Elvis Presley ever recorded. And this is the UK version from 1960. It was my mum's, so it's got her name up there, Janet. Up there. It's in mono. It's got the Elvis there, and inside here there's a whole load of pictures that were taken when he was in the army, based in Germany. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Really, really good. I like just looking at the cover of this and looking at all the old pictures of him. It just showed that Elvis Presley was not beaten by the army. He still had the youthful rock energy. But yeah, that soon changed with the advent of all the stupid movies he was in. Sadly. Number one on my list, don't know if anyone's going to guess it or not, but we go back to 1960 again, just like Elvis Is Back, and he's gone from pure rock and roll badass on the previous album, Elvis Is Back, to His Hand in Mine. This was Elvis Presley's 5th studio album, his first gospel album or spiritual / religious album. Reached number 13 in the US, number 6 in Australia, number 3 in the UK. It contains traditional and new gospel songs, as well as a couple of hymns. He's got the Jordanaires back in him, and they're just absolutely fabulous. Their harmonies lift Elvis Presley's vocals to a whole new level. And you can understand how religion did rule Elvis Presley's life. You can feel it in the way he sings. He means every word he says. And even if you're not a spiritual person, once you hear this album, you'll be a believer. Even just for a short time, you'll believe everything that's being sung on this album. It's absolutely brilliant. I know this isn't the original cover. The original cover was that part of Elvis, and he was sitting down on a piano, so his hands are down. His hands are down here on a piano like that. But I just love this cover. I think this is absolutely fabulous. It sums up the album in my opinion. And yeah, Elvis Presley, His Hand in Mine. The greatest Elvis Presley album of all time in my opinion. So there you go folks. That's my wrap up of my top 10 favourite Elvis Presley albums of all time. And I've been a lifelong fan since about the time I could walk, basically. Mum and Dad were playing Elvis, and yeah, I cried at his grave when I went there in 2011. So big huge fan. He's meant a hell of a lot to me through my whole life, and still does. So thanks for watching this, guys, and leave your comments in the section below. Are you an Elvis Presley fan? Do you own these albums? What do you think of his gospel material over his rock and roll material, country material, etc, etc? Anyway, guys, I said thanks for watching. Stay safe, take care, all for now. Catch you around, and Lloyd has left the building.